Plan Town Hall. Today is Thursday, April 8th, and we're getting ready to get started. My name is Malcolm Graham. I'd like to thank and welcome everyone to the meeting tonight. Again, this town hall is about the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan. This is the first of a series of town halls to take a deeper dive into the major topics discussed at the March 22nd public hearing. Today's topic is anti-displacement and vulnerable neighborhoods, creating great neighborhoods. I am Malcolm Graham, representing District 2, and I'm hosting this event tonight in my role as chair of the Great Neighborhoods Committee. These listening sessions are an opportunity to hear directly from residents. Before we get started, I'm going to go over quick housekeeping items. During this town hall, our goal is to listen and collect feedback from our community. Comments and questions related to the technical side of the plan will be best answered by planning staff. So what we'll do is collect those comments and questions and send responses via email as follow-up after tonight's event. Also, any comments or questions that we're unable to get to tonight within the scheduled time frame will also be shared via email. When it's time for the listening session to begin, please use the raise your hand feature to be called upon. Staff will keep a list of who's next to speak, and when it's your turn, we will call your name and you'll be unmuted. Each person will have 1 minute to speak. You can also use the question and answer function to type comments as we move throughout the event. Additionally, we will be monitoring comments on social media. Now, I would like to share a brief overview of tonight's topic. Charlotte is currently 15th largest city in the U.S. and estimated to add another 400,000 people to its population by 2040. Many of the growth challenges that our community faces today will not go away, but it will intensify if we aren't innovative in finding impactful yet equitable solutions to accommodate new growth while providing quality places for people to live, work, play, and do business in our community. A comprehensive plan is an important and necessary piece of the next stage in Charlotte's growth. The Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan is a citywide, long-range plan that will guide the development and investments made in our city over the next 2 decades. Key elements of the draft plan document, released in October 2020, addresses neighborhood and considers that Charlotte has an opportunity to diversify its housing by incorporating duplex, triplex, fourplex, townhomes, accessory dwelling units, and other small lot housing types. A mix of housing options and lot size can increase housing options, help address the deficit of available housing stock in our community, and to increase residential density and help create an even more vibrant community. Many examples of these housing options already exist in many of our neighborhoods today, but how do we provide them in the most places without causing displacement in our vulnerable communities? It is important to state that the 2040 Comprehensive Plan remains committed to preserving and protecting Charlotte's charming neighborhoods and vibrant communities. Single-family homes are not being eliminated, torn down, or not allowed in future development. This is reflective in the current plan. There is a misconception on this topic, but you can find complete information on how the plan addressing housing goal 2 on page 102 of the plan. Next week, our Mayor Pro Tem, Julie Eisel, will host a town hall to specifically discuss policies related to single-family neighborhoods. I will share more details on how to participate later this evening. Tonight's discussion is about how to make the plan better by making sure the process, residents, vulnerable communities are not being displaced as a result of the plan policies. So, we want to hear from the community about their experiences and welcome their ideas. At this time, we'll begin the listening session. Remember to use the raise your hand feature to be called upon. Staff will keep a list of who is next to speak, and when it's your turn, we will call your name and you'll be unmuted. Each person will have 1 minute to speak. Let's get started.
And as a IT situation, Facebook is down right now. We did put the WebEx information on Twitter. Facebook is having an issue right now, so we did put the WebEx information on Twitter. If you're trying to watch via Facebook, please go to @CLTGov, go to @CLTGov on Twitter to get the WebEx information.
Thank you.
There are no hands up currently.
Currently, there is no hands up. And so again, this is a listening session, an opportunity to hear from you, members of the community, about how we move forward in terms of our 2040 plan relating to neighborhoods and how do we create great neighborhoods and do not displace people by the policies within the framework. And I see we have a question, and that question is from Peter Kelly.
Malcolm, first of all, thank you for having the session tonight and for listening to the community. We appreciate it. Given that the current zoning R8 in the city, the 2040 plan and allowing duplexes, triplexes, and quads throughout a neighborhood, we have experienced recently history in neighborhoods like Seversville, Smallwood, Double Oaks, Optimus Park, Wilmore, and Camp Green, where the current zoning is R8, we have suffered significant forced displacement. How, given that that policy is equal to today's current R8 zoning, how would that affect the displacement going forward? What additional steps are included in the plan that would, in fact, mitigate the experiences that that zoning type has actually had occur in Charlotte over the last few years? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Peter. And I think we have members of our planning staff online as well, Allison and Ty. Do anyone you want to jump in and chime in on that question?
So I wonder if maybe we should wait until we get orders before we respond. But I hear that. One of the things that all through the plan, we have different tools, at least policies and objectives that talk about mitigating displacement. One is, of course, what the city does right now, which is dedicating 10% of our housing trust fund towards home ownership in vulnerable communities, which really covers some of the areas where Peter mentioned. That's one. Another one is protecting existing naturally occurring affordable housing from being torn down. We have language around that. We also talk about what we call neighborhood conservation overlay district, which really we looked at what Raleigh did as part of their comprehensive plan to protect sensitive or fragile communities that don't have deed restrictions or homeowners associations that could protect them, that could be a tool for protecting fragile communities. Now it's going to take a lot of buy-in from the current residents of a particular community to decide they want to trigger an NCOD, or Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, but that's also in the comprehensive plan. And then we've proposed also having what we call the formation of an anti-displacement commission, not a task force, but a commission that will be made up of residents of these communities that will really work with staff and council over the next year or two upon the adoption of the plan to make sure that there are also ideas and things that can be brought forward that may be somewhat different from what we may have today, but that they themselves are organically bringing up. An example is the Charlotte, the Community Land Trust, the very first one that was launched on the west side. That could also happen in different parts of the community. I believe that Knight Foundation, it was, that studied about 26 metro areas in the last year or two, and about 11,000 residents in the United States. Charlotte was one of those metro areas. They highlighted the three top things that keep people from being displaced. One of them is something similar to a community land trust. Another one is similar to investment in arts and culture and entertainment amenities. And so that's something that we're discussing right now that could be added to the comprehensive plan. And finally, we have talked about the concept of community benefits agreement as a funding tool. Whether that is the language we use or not, it's really an opportunity for residents to participate in the development process. So over the next several weeks, we will be working with the Community Benefits Coalition and the development industry to come up with some ideas as to how can we make that happen to protect residents from being displaced. Because if there are things that residents buy into in their community, the likelihood is that they will stay there long term. And so these are that's a combination. I would direct Peter Kelly and others who are listening to the presentation that was made to Great Neighborhoods Committee yesterday morning. It has a lot of initiatives that are existing right now today, as well as other initiatives that the plan itself has. It's going to be a combination of those two things that will help us to mitigate displacement. And again, I want to say this will be involuntary displacement, not voluntary displacement, and there's a huge distinction between the two. So that I may be able to speak to other questions maybe when they come, but I wanted to lay that out there right now. Thank you so much.
Well, no, thank you, Ty, for that comment. And Ty is absolutely correct. We had a very good meeting on yesterday, the Great Neighborhoods Committee, where a number of policies, resources, and initiatives that the city currently has in place to protect against displacement. Ty mentioned some, there are others, from housing counseling services to home ownership and down payment assistance, through our CARES Act, which was rental and utility assistance, the Aging in Place program. So there are a number of tools that the city currently has now, toolbox that we're currently using that will be incorporated in some fashion in terms of the 2040 plan. So thank you for the question, Peter. And now next up we have Jimmy Vasilov. Welcome,
Hello.
Jimmy.
Thank you. Seeing all the sort of housing initiatives we have and things like, Aging in Place, all these programs that we have, they're very good in theory, but I think the problem with them a lot of times is we're kind of facing a runaway train with regard to sort of economic growth. And I think one of the things that we really need to do as a city is sort of strengthen land trusts, and not only land trusts, but also community benefits agreements. So I think, especially since this plan, if we're looking at it, will ultimately, essentially at the end of the day, there's no leverage, or there's less of a leverage with the rezoning process, with, the new UDO that's going to be put in place. So I think we really need, with this plan, in order to we need to kind of strengthen land trusts and also CBAs as well.
Thank you, Jimmy. I made note of that in terms of strengthening land trusts and CBOs as well. And I think those both will be addressed as well in the final document. We got a question from Alex Alexander, and she wrote that the 2040 plan does not give steps to how the displacement will be addressed. What steps are there that will prevent the 2040 from displacement? And that goes back to the first question that Ty, our planning director, answered, and I shared some comments as well. Again, I'm looking at a list of all these current policies, resources, and initiatives that the city currently has. Again, housing trust investment, housing counseling services, partnering with community housing development organization, home ownership and down payment assistance, rental and utility assistance, aging in place, housing CLT, which is our homeless assistance program, naturally recurring affordable dwellings, etc. And so while it's not addressed specifically in the plan, there are also city policies and resources and initiatives that we currently have that will be a part of making sure when the plan is implemented in terms of its aspirational nature, these policies are already there and that they will go fit hand in glove with the plan to ensure that the council and the city is ensuring through its policies and its procedures that there's a method in place to ensure that displacement does not occur. We funded these initiatives. There are more funding coming from our budget this year, and these things are top of mind in reference to how the city will respond to and through policies, resources, and initiatives to ensure that, in fact, people are not displaced. Again, if you want to go back and look at yesterday's great neighborhoods committee, we discussed these initiatives in somewhat more detail than we're having tonight. Just as a housekeeping matter, the Facebook is back up, and so you can watch this on Facebook on the city's page. And our next question is from Carla. Carla, welcome. Carla, you're on. Okay, we will go to.
Now I'm unmuted. She did not unmute me. Now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Malcolm.
Okay.
Based on your presentation, I believe you said it was yesterday. The document that was presented starts with an overview of what the city planning department would just define as vulnerable neighborhoods vulnerable to displacement. And my question is, before you base policies on that definition, that's page 1 of your handout from yesterday, citizens have pointed out errors in that data. Will the data be fixed before we start basing solutions on that data? Thank you.
Thank you. Sylvie, Todd, could you chime in on that as well?
I don't know what error was pointed out, so maybe Carla can elaborate on that. But one thing I do know someone did bring up was that it was a 2019 information. That was based on the nearest American Community Survey data that we have, the most current one. So unless there's any other error that was pointed out that I'm not aware of, please, I'd like more information on that, and we definitely will look at that.
Okay.
How would you like to get that data? I submitted those errors, those obvious errors to me. I submitted them before Thanksgiving.
So that would definitely then be, so if you have, then that's obviously included in the comments that have been responded to. So I'll say for the benefit of everyone listening that all the more than 650 comments that were responded to, we have responses to, that was submitted rather, we have responses to them that I believe are also on the website. So if you have provided that comment, I'm very sure that they have been responded to. And if indeed those errors are definitely relevant to the conversation, that are not just data sensitive, but there are other things, we will make sure that we address those in the next iteration of the plan. So I just want to assure you, the comments, if you submitted them, they are compiled and there are responses to them.
Sir, I'm not questioning if they were adequately compiled. I'm questioning that when I pointed out an error, y'all may have acknowledged I pointed it out. I'm asking, are you basing your solutions on the errors that are in your data? Or are you going to fix your data and then base solutions on the fixes in the data?
So
I don't want to use this time as a debate.
No, that's what I was getting ready to say, Ty. Carla, we got your question captured. We will, our plan director has responded once. We'll present that to him again. And as I said earlier in the meeting during the introduction, we'll get a email response to your question. Thank you for asking. Our next question is from Sylvia. Sylvia, welcome.
Thank you so much, Councilman Graham. So I really want to kind of, I guess, reiterate some of the things that we've kind of been hearing, and maybe there's a reason why we keep hearing some semblance of the same question, and really looking at what's on the ground right now. I kind of think about Cherry and Greer Heights, where our missing middle housing, we're talking about our duplexes, our triplexes and quadplexes, really are demolished and replaced with single-family 3,000 square foot homes. Despite adopted MMC area plan or the Cherry small area plan, and City Council unanimously approved these plans. So I guess the question then becomes, how do we know that the new plan will not accelerate gentrification and displacement? Like we've seen it happen before. despite the area plans that had been adopted, there still was a way that the missing middle housing, and now we're going back to the same housing we just demolished in many of these communities. We're going back to the naturally occurring affordable housing. We're going back to the housing that allowed people to age in place. And so we're going back to that whole framework, but a lot of that housing has already been taken out of communities. So how do we know that council members, the zoning committee, the planning staff will not find a way to write statements of consistency or inconsistency and approve projects that lead to further displacement? So we really are asking, will the plan have teeth to prevent displacement and gentrification? Or will developers' vision overshadow the vision of communities?
Thank you for the question, Sylvia. Ty?
Question, Sylvia, and thank you for your comments on Tuesday at the BOCC as well. Hopefully you got my email too, if you will share your notes with me as well. I appreciate that. But, I wish I could tell you that a comprehensive plan will resolve all the problems that we have. It will not. It will, however, do one thing that we don't have today. And that is that a number of our community area plans are outdated, and therefore they are not consistent with a lot of what we see today. Not only that, a lot of our regulations are ordinances that the Unified Development Ordinance is trying to address are also outdated. And so there are loopholes in them. What the comprehensive plan will do will be to minimize those loopholes, so to speak. It will have policies that will eventually be translated into zoning ordinance that will help to avoid certain loopholes and achieve two things. On the part of the community, it will bring about transparency to the process, and that's very important. On the part of the developer, it will bring about some degree of predictability. And in between those two things, there could be tension, and that tension could be healthy. And so it's important for us that as we walk through the next phase of the comprehensive plan after adoption, when we start to map the place types with the community, and you start sharing with us where you want some of this housing diversity to be, that's when we can actually tidy a lot of things up that will impact what goes into the Unified Development Ordinance. Right now, the comprehensive plan has some really strong and I believe healthy language around the, tearing down buildings. Like I said earlier on, we have certain tools in place today that the comprehensive plan can actually strengthen, and also have some policies in that comprehensive plan that will actually help us to overcome, indiscriminate tearing down of buildings to make way for single family buildings in many parts of our city. So you're right, we have not built enough missing middle homes. We're hopeful that by this policy in the plan, it allows us to build more. But it also will help us if going forward into the UDO that you work with us so that we're able to also identify areas of challenges in the community, especially when we're working through the place types mapping, to identify how we can make sure that the policies that will be translated into the Unified Development Ordinance will mitigate largely the tearing down of any missing middle to make way for McMansions, like you said. But the plan has some of those in place today. We just have to make sure that they are combined with the existing tools that we have. At the end of the day, the UDO is what's really very important, the Unified Development Ordinance, to mitigate some of those things.
Thank you, Sylvia, for the question. And again, for all the listening audience, we are taking down the questions. I want to thank our planning director. He's playing more of a role than I think he anticipated, but I think it's really important for you to really hear from the experts and the individual on the ground doing the work. And so I want to thank our planning director for stepping up to the plate tonight and really responding to the public directly and for his leadership on these issues. Amber, welcome to the conversation. What's your question?
Thank you. I'm actually, I did child protective service investigations for 7 years in Charlotte, and now I'm in real estate. So I've been in and out of many neighborhoods throughout the city. And I guess a lot of what you guys are talking about with the community land trust, those ideas, everything is on a macro level. On a micro level, I'm wondering what we can do. I guess this is more of a question, like you guys said, if you partner with policymakers, how we can be available, even myself as a real estate agent, someone who has a lot of connections in the community, how we can provide feedback and get the people who are most affected in these neighborhoods, the people most affected by displacement, how we can give them a voice to make this a more amicable and realistic solution, and not just from the top down. As I feel like whatever changes are made could be more beneficial to get everyone involved, whether it's supporting the businesses, because in a lot of these communities there are small businesses, business owners that live in those communities that may need resources that could be strengthened to have them help give back. What I'm seeing on the real estate side, a lot of what everyone's seeing, people come swooping down, investors tearing down houses. If we could offer things to homeowners, grants, programs, more things like that to help them preserve their homes. And also the last thing, to have a voice. I don't know all the ins and outs of the politics, but I remember in Valentine at one point when there was going to be a bus stop or some apartments built, and I don't know if people in these communities could fight the same way Valentine did to not have these things done. So just some ideas, and I appreciate your time.
Amber, thank you for your comments. I think they're well said in terms of making sure that all voices are heard, and I'm taking notes myself in terms of issues of the gentrification, making sure that quote unquote the little guy don't get the short end of the stick in terms of development decisions that council makes. Is ultimately at some point in time council will be making zoning decisions, and that we want to be consistent to plans that we already have in place. But certainly having community input is really important, and more important, making sure, as I said earlier, that the policies and the resources and the initiatives that the city put forward are forward thinking, that are very progressive, that leans towards helping people remain in their neighborhoods and being supportive of those efforts, and trying to work as hard as we can to ensure that gentrification does not occur. And that might be a tall order for not only the city of Charlotte, but for communities throughout the country as they tend to grow and prosper. But certainly those items that you and others mentioned, Amber, are top of mind. So thank you for the question and the comment. Austin, welcome to the conversation.
Hi. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having this meeting. I really just wanted to touch on the potential ramifications of the North Side Applied Innovation Corridor and the overlap with the corridors of opportunity, specifically for North Tryon and Graham Street, and how the coincided development of the two will also factor in potential displacement and also affordable housing in those areas.
Okay, could you repeat? Is that a question or just stating a comment for our records?
Both, and really just seeing your thoughts on that statement, and also for the record.
All right, so repeat the statement again, Austin. I'm sorry.
I was wondering on how the coincided developments of the Applied Innovation Corridor and the corridors of opportunity plan for North Tryon and Graham Street, since they're in such close proximity, how will the effects overlap?
So I can speak to that, but not necessarily from the comprehensive plan angle. Good question, Austin. I know where that question is going. So we do have a Corridors of Opportunity program launched by mayor and council members a year ago, and that's focused on 6 corridors that have not really had the benefit of investment for many years and decades. We started with Perry's Ford. We went to West Boulevard. We're currently looking at Central and West Sugar Creek and I-85 and North Tryon and North Graham. Freedom as well as Central Albemarle are also included in that. Right now, our focus is on North Tryon and Graham, and we're looking at how you leverage what we have with regards to the Camp North End and the Smart District on North Tryon. How do you leverage that and also leverage other things that you have there, such as our fire headquarters, the development. There's a lot of townhomes, and I believe duplexes even along in that part of Charlotte. How do you leverage some of what you have today with Brightwalk so close and yet invest infrastructure along those corridors that can actually help to lift up residents and businesses that are located in that area? So right now, at this point in time, I actually just did a field tour of North Tryon and Graham a couple of days ago. I'm working with my colleagues in economic development, housing, as well as transportation to really use what we've done with Beresford and West Boulevard to use that as a model as, while this is a different geography, what are the things that can be done through that Corridors of Opportunity program to really invest in infrastructure that will support what we have there today, as well as attract new businesses. So you're going to be hearing more from us in the future with specific projects on those on North Graham as well as North Tryon.
Thank you, Ty. And also, as we go through the budget cycle for this budget year, which will end in June and go into effect July 1, again, we're looking at making sure that the Corridors of Opportunity program is well funded moving forward. And then, as our planning director said, that we're making those type of investments along the corridors that benefit the people who live there now, and that they are part of the change and they're not victims of change. So thank you for the question. We got a statement from a good friend of mine, Ricky Hall, and Ricky writes, those strategies are well and good, yet the rapid rate of land and housing loss brought on by predatory investors are outpacing the initiatives outlined in the anti-displacement document. Without strategies that accelerate usage of CBAs or land trust models, we will continue to lose ground. Do we plan to use other tools like land banking initiative as a component of anti-displacement? Ricky, thank you for the question, and I think you're absolutely right. One of the things I think we definitely have to do is land bank. And I've been saying that for quite a while now, that we have to be able to have land control of the property that's available, that the city plays a role in that for sure as we kind of develop the city. And I'm old enough to know that when I first got on council back in 1999, when we wanted to grow Thai as a community, we just simply annexed. And we did that for quite a while now. Obviously, fast forward, all the development that we're doing now is more infill development. And then if we don't have control of the land, then we lose our destiny, I think, in terms of how we plan a community that's well balanced. And so I agree with you, Ricky, in terms of working to identify parcels of land that the city can be forward thinking and purchasing, especially land that exists along corridors of opportunity and within inner city communities that we can control in terms for not only for housing, but also small business and retail opportunities, and just kind of steering the growth of the community. So question well stated from my great friend, Ricky Hall. Presley Gordon, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks, Councilman. I'm a commercial real estate broker in town, and I'm, we really appreciate the plan, and we have some good ideas in it, but then there's some things that we'd like to see changed. And a couple of things that are currently not allowed under North Carolina law are CBAs, impact fees, and mandatory inclusion zoning. Those things to us, from the people that are out on the front lines, they're bringing businesses here and showing them space and showing them sites. If we have some of those things in place, it adds risk to the equation. And when risk is put in, developers and buyers tend to shy away. So I don't want to lose our competitive advantage that we've built over these great number of years and continue the good growth that we strive to have, on a daily basis. And if we put some of these things in, I fear that we may be driving some people away. And capital, as we all know, we will find the most affordable place to go. And if we put up barriers, it'll simply move to another spot. So I just put that out to you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Gordon. We really appreciate those. We've taken those down for the record and acknowledge your statement. Thank you very much. We got a question that came in, Ty, and I'll jump in first. You might want to jump in too as well. What are the consequences for neighborhoods vulnerable to displacement if we fail to pass the 2040 plan in a timely fashion? It is my understanding, my hope and desire, based on the outline that the mayor has set for city council, that we will hopefully pass the 2040 plan sometime in June, before we enter the next fiscal year in July 1 of this year, which means that's why we're having these town hall meetings tonight. And there are two other plans to, again, get more input from the community on narrowly tailored topics. Of course, tonight we're talking about anti-displacement and how to create great neighborhoods. There'll be other community town halls focusing on other areas as well. The planning staff over the last month and a half have done really a great job of going out into the community, doing a lot of listening in terms of what they're hearing in reference to feedback from the plan. So I think we will be in a position, hopefully, to move forward with the adoption of a plan based on a number of inputs from the community, probably in June of this year. The larger question is, what if, how do we prevent displacement in our community? And that's a tougher question to answer. One of the things that I hope that we would do is, after the plan is adopted, there are a number of organizations that has recommended an anti-displacement stakeholders commission to work alongside of the Charlotte City Council and planning staff to really focus in on that particular issue. I think it has to be one of those things that we do. They're thinking about vulnerable neighborhoods. That part of what I would like to recommend as a member of the council is to support those communities, because as I said earlier, I mean, how do we protect neighborhoods? How do we keep people in their homes, in their neighborhoods, and that as we grow as a city, and so Ty, you might want to jump on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Important for us to have a citywide cohesive plan. We don't have. In 1985, that was developed, called the Generalized Land Use Plan, but it was actually because what that plan did was to break Charlotte into 5 geographies. And from district area, station area plans do not communicate with one another. What they do is that really brings together some of the really key parts. Some of those community area plans have some really good languages and policies in there. comprehensive plan like this, what we end up doing will be to be developing at an inequitable way in different parts of the city. We will continue to rely on the same old community area plan to determine consistency or inconsistency. Some of those area plans are as old as 1992. And so we need to make sure that this plan helps us to come up to that place. And finally, is the fact that we've said Charlotte needs to be a plan-making city, not a deal-making city. I talked about the whole notion of predictability and transparency earlier on. The developers want predictability. Residents want transparency in the process. I believe that this plan, coupled with the community area planning, community mapping, and the UDO, will help us to achieve both. Maybe not 100% at the beginning, but at least to a certain degree, and over time we ramp up. And one thing we need to also be mindful of is that while it says it's a 2040 plan, this plan will be revised every 5 years. So there may be things that we didn't capture today, but that does not necessarily mean that we do not have the time to revisit them over the next 5 years as well. So if we don't have one, or if we don't have a good one, it's just business as usual for us, and that's not the best way for us to go.
Thanks, Ty. Welcome to the conversation, Ishmael. You're on.
Hey, how are you guys? I think there are a lot of great points that have been raised. Again, my name is Ishmael, and I'm with the Community Benefits Coalition. So I think one question I had was, how do we kind of ensure that the anti-displacement stakeholder group actually is representative of, people who are, in the crosshairs of displacement, right? Whether it's by market forces or whatever else, right? How do we actually ensure that there's real representation there? I think that's one question. I think another question is that how do we, when we think about the fact that, like, say, the concerns of a neighborhood in, like, say, Far East Charlotte are going to be different than the concerns of a neighborhood maybe that's, like, closer to center city, how do we kind of, like, balance the need for there to be some sort of, like, comprehensive vision for the city with the fact that, like, different neighborhoods have, like, different needs? And the old area plan kind of scheme created a way in which a neighborhood could kind of maintain some kind of, like, consistency, like, across the board when it came to zoning decisions, right? The last thing I would really bring up is that I think that the way in which we kind of work to prevent displacement is really through mechanisms that allow for greater community control in terms of access to the development process and growth. And that's going to be through community benefit agreements. And that's going to be through also the city creating a community benefit fund that communities can take advantage of directly. And we know that community benefit agreements have to do with zoning regulation, which cities do have the power to do, even in the Dillon's Rule state. So this claim about community benefit agreements being illegal is just not true, and it's not based in law or fact. So yeah, thank you.
Ishmael, thank you for those 3 questions. And again, we're capturing all the questions. We will provide a formal response by email. But let me talk to the Anti-Displacement Commission first, right? It would have to be adopted by council for the commission to exist. I'm going on record tonight saying that I believe that we should have one. I think it makes sense as we grow as a community that each and every citizen has a role in determining how we grow, especially their neighborhoods. And I think we know exactly through our quarters of opportunity programs where some of the fragile and somewhat threatened neighborhoods are located. And so if council approves it along with the plan, I am almost certain that we will be forward thinking in terms of making sure that the citizens who are on the committee are well represented from the community and those neighborhoods that we're focusing on and we're trying to protect and preserve. There are a number of factors that in terms of what the committee will be charged to do and how we formulated those details certainly ought to be worked out later. But again, I only speak for myself as one council member who believes that is the direction that we need to go and willing to put the resources in such a commission that would make it very effective and efficient, and staffed with individuals from the community to address those community concerns. Ty, you want to kind of weigh in on the latter part of the question, and as you heard it?
Yeah, yes, sir. I can do that. So thank you, Ismail, for the question. On that part, yes, I do agree. We have different parts of our city that need different things and have different people living there. But the benefit of I say quote and unquote, blanket policy document is that it helps us to achieve that equitable growth framework so that one part of the city does not experience the benefits of growth and development while another part suffers from the impact of growth and development or burdened by it. A classic example, the 2030 Transit System Plan is a citywide blanket statement. However, we know that rail is not going to go everywhere. Rail will only go to certain places. But then we have 80% of our system is by bus transit. Every part of the city needs a busing system, whether you are in the north or in the south or in the west, or regardless of where you live in the city, you need a transit system, an efficient one, a robust one, a good one. It may not just be rail. And even if it's bus, it may be a different type of service. And so that's where you begin to now focus on the community area plans. This document talks about 2040 plan for the entire city, but it also talks about 15 different geographies that we're going to do mapping and community area plans for over the next 2 years after the map is adopted. After the plan is adopted and we have a UDO, we're working on 15 different geographies. Today, we have almost 100 different area plans and district plans. We know that not every part of our city is the same. And so we're going to make sure that we bring community members from these different geographies to participate in developing their own area plans. We will equip the communities with the resources and the toolkit that is needed to do these area plans. The comprehensive plan actually talks extensively about what that looks like, talks about the criteria for defining what an area is, talks about the content of that community area plan. Once you start getting to, I believe, page 185 or 190 or so, you see what that toolkit looks like for generating that. So we do acknowledge the fact that, yes, this is a cohesive citywide plan, but we also know that there are certain geographies that have different needs from other geographies. Hence the reason we start with this as an umbrella document, then go down to the community area planning where we're able to address these different geographies. And we call those 15 geographies, specifically mentioned 15 in the comprehensive plan. Now, we're going to need you to help us define those when we get into the place types mapping. Could it be more than 15? Maybe, but we will depend on you to help us do that.
Thank you, Ty. Welcome to the conversation, Christina.
Hello, thank you. Councilmember Graham and Tyrell, my name is Christina Danis. I'm an Eastside resident, a 2040 Plan ambassador, a Charlotte East board member, and a League of Women Voters Environment Action Team member. Thanks for providing this opportunity. My comment is related to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan equitable growth framework and the proposed displacement stakeholders group and our city's youth. The equitable growth framework is intended to reflect and build upon the community's input regarding longstanding disparities and inequities that do not go far enough in addressing the inequitable distribution of the past. The plan includes 4 equity metrics to describe populations vulnerable, and I reside in one of those pixels on that map. Charlotte is a city of neighborhoods, each with its own distinct past and social fabric, and as you know, unchecked gentrification can result in substantial displacement. Therefore, it is critical that the plan identify ways that existing residents and businesses can participate, and I thank you for having this conversation and inviting us. But the voices most important to include are our young people. After all, this plan is their future. I suggest the establishment of a youth planning council that reflects all areas of the city and is coordinated with CMS, so students selected for the council are provided educational credit and provided access to participate in council policy development conversations that turn this plan into an idea. Action from an idea. Please include youth representatives from CMS, community college, and university partners at the table for these conversations. They are the 2040 Future Plan Ambassadors. I welcome the opportunity to discuss this further with you all. Thank you.
Christina, thank you for those comments. Those comments are duly noted for our records. Our planning director has heard them as well, and thank you for tuning in tonight. A question came through. Would homeowners who voluntarily want to sell be prohibited from doing so? Ty?
Sure. So at the risk of sounding very academic, I'll say that cltfuture2040.com, if you go on there and you click on the resources, it will show you the FAQ, and that's one of the frequently asked questions that we answered there, that homeowners can still have the liberty to do what they want with their property as long as they comply with certain requirements that will be today in the zoning ordinance or in the UDO, such as setback requirements. Your lot size will define how much you can actually do on there. So this does not infringe on your property rights as a homeowner. However, you are going to still have to comply with just the same way you will have to comply with zoning regulations today, stormwater regulations, and all of those things. You will have to do that. This plan does advance certain things though, and that is that, if you are going to do something with your property, you also have to make sure that you're mindful of, your neighbors. And so coming up with, when we get into that place types mapping where we invite neighbors, that's something we've not done. The last time we did anything like that was as a region during Connect Our Future, where as a region we did place types mapping together. But this is going to focus on Charlotte and neighborhoods this time. And I believe that it's really been able to hear from our neighbors, whether they be developers or they be residents or businesses, what specific place types should look like and what the limits of tolerance in terms of, development, what they look like in those neighborhoods. So that, I will leave it at that. But if you will go on that cltfuture2040.com and click on, I believe, resources, you're going to find the FAQ related to single family messaging, anti-displacement. And one of those questions is, what happens to my properties, to my property as a homeowner? And hopefully that will help. But if not, please feel free to message us with further questions so we can answer them, give more clarity to the answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd, for that response. It is now 6:23, and we're going to be tuning off at 6:30. So I just want to remind everyone that if you have a question, please submit it. If we don't get a chance to answer it on the air, we will certainly give you a response to your question. So just want to kind of be mindful of everyone's time and calendar for our 6:30 stop. And now I welcome to the conversation Tim. Tim, welcome.
Thank you, Malcolm. This is Tim Sinema. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight and to hear our concerns. Thanks to Ty and Allison and the planning team for the great work they've done to date on this. My comment is specific to displacement concerns. I support increasing the supply of housing as one way among many to combat the affordability crisis that we've got. One way to do that is, as the plan incorporates, the changes to the single-family zoning. So I support that generally. But clearly reasonable people can disagree on the impact that this plan will have on displacement and gentrification. And one of the concerns specifically that I have relates to just looking at the numbers. I had the Realtors Association pull some data together, and over the last 5 years, there's been 20 homes sold at 300,000 and below for every home sold at 900,000 and above. So 20 times more homes sold under 300,000 than over 900,000. And so when single-family zoning is relaxed to include duplexes and triplexes, the market forces are demanding, price points under $300,000. And the places that those homes are going to get built are in the more marginalized communities. And so I agree with the comments that Sylvia and Ricky had made prior. I'm just concerned that that flood of construction and investment in these lower cost communities are going to overtax the infrastructure, the schools, the other amenities that are, and the roads and traffic concerns that are in some of these communities that have been disinvested. So I guess the message is beware the unintended consequences of this plan, as well intentioned as they are. Thank you.
Tim, thank you for those comments. They've been duly noted for our records. Again, Ty's on the call. He heard what you said. Certainly, I've taken in what you said as well. And thank you for being here tonight and being a part of our program. Welcome to a good friend of mine, Todd Mansfield. Welcome, Todd. Todd Mansfield, you're up. Has he been unmuted? Todd Mansfield, you're on deck. Okay, we'll come back to Todd. Charmaine Morrison. Charmaine, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Councilman, can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Thank you. My question kind of piggybacks on the one that was last stated. I live in the east side, and I'm wondering, how does the 2040 plan address growth versus infrastructure? Near where I am, we have a huge amount of density going on. On Parkton Road, a 299 housing development is going up, but there's no infrastructure. We still have 2-lane roads around here. We don't have access to public transportation. So my assumption is that these are not going to be affordable houses, because they are going to assume people have their own transportation, because there's one bus stop around here. So how does the plan address that?
Ty?
Yes, thank you very much, Councilmember Graham. So the blessing of a comprehensive plan can also be its curse. If that's a way to address it, it's very high level, it's very direction oriented, very advisory in nature, and policy driven, but more in a framework setting. And we know that while it is strictly a land use effort, we also know that there are companion documents and policies that will really help to bring this to life. One of those being the strategic mobility plan that we're working on right now. That strategic mobility plan talks about, you might be familiar with that transportation action plan, which was developed back in 2017, that says that we will need billions of investment in transit and transportation infrastructure over the next 25 years. That's been updated to be a strategic mobility plan that will call for investments in roadway improvements, investments in transit improvements, investments in greenway bike and sidewalk improvement. That's going on a separate but accompanying task that council will take action on that in the future. In the meantime, though, there are things that can be done today independent of this comprehensive plan that's related to infrastructure. One of them we mentioned earlier on, that the investment that comes through the corridors of opportunities. And then I know that we've been having conversation with the Far East Neighborhood Coalition, FENCO. I've spoken with them twice, and I know we have another meeting coming up next week, myself, Director of Transportation, and CART Executive Director, to speak to the community about some ideas around provision of transit and also what we can do in the future with regards to infrastructure. And I'll end with this. Infrastructure investments need density to be able to justify it, whether they be transit services or whether they be investment in sidewalks and all of those. It is not safe to put a bus stop in the middle of nowhere, where people cannot safely be there. a lot of what we call density are hundreds of single-family residential units in transit. When you think about that single-family development oriented, but when you have diverse service. So that's one area where this plan helps to make that stronger language around.
To get to within the scheduled time frame will be in the chat in the box so we can respond to them.
Graham, I appreciate your service and appreciate all the work that Ty and the rest of the city staff have done in putting this necessarily opposed, and I don't think a lot of folks are necessarily opposed to increasing the opportunity for housing supply. Found the lack of economic study done on the effects of what actually increase it. And I'm worried about the studies because I have a Chicago study where actual higher property prices, but no additional new affordable housing construction. Furthermore, agreements are legal. In fact, they are not under state law. And my biggest concern is that, and this is my question, why are we rushing to approve this when we have one of the top 5 real estate economies in the state, when we have members of the community like myself who are willing to work with city staff and council to help create a plan that will take care to make sure that all share equally in opportunity and growth of our city? And why have we not done proper economic impact studies to see what the effect of this will be, and rushing this through when there is no legal timeline for adoption?
Well, Larry, thank you for the question. I'll take part of it and I'll let Ty jump in at the end. This process of the 2040 comprehensive plan has been going on for well over a year and a half or more. So I don't think that we're rushing it. I think it's coming to a conclusion. Certainly, members of the community have identified areas that they would like for council to take a look at in reference to what I would call dotting I's and crossing T's, and some are larger issues as well. And I think over the last month, the last 6 weeks, really, the planning staff under the direction of Ty and Alicia and others have really gone beyond being good public servants. They've done their jobs and going out to the community. He's here tonight, again, trying to be responsive to the community. Even when the plan was supposed to be voted on earlier, the mayor has extended that until sometime in June to make sure that we really hear from as many people as possible. And so I don't think it's a rushing, Larry. I think it's coming to a conclusion. As we said earlier, the plan is aspirational in nature. It will be amended every 5 years. And certainly, I think, and I won't speak for our planning director, I'll speak for me. I think that over the next couple of weeks, there will be some rewriting of the draft based on comments and feedback that we've heard from the community. And so I think we're progressively moving forward with a plan that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think where the plan needs furniture polish or a little bit of Windex or updating, I think Ty and his staff has heard from the community and willing to make those type of adjustments. Ty, I'll give you the last word on that.
Thank you, sir. Hey, thank you, Larry, for your support. I'll take it. Um, but I think you're referring to Yona Freemark study, which I've gone through, and I happen to know Yona very well myself. But again, it pretty much cautioned against setting high expectations for short-term impacts. And that's not what we're doing here. The experience in Chicago is obviously going to be different from the experience in, other parts of the country. Grand Rapids was the first city to do this, but they're very small. But I'll tell you that I arrived in Grand Rapids right after they did that. And that was a major reason for them to secure 80% federal funding for the bus rapid transit that operated along Division Avenue in Grand Rapids. One of the major reasons cited for the success of that grant was the fact that land along that corridor was rezoned to allow multiple types of housing. And so could it have been that if that wasn't done, they might not have got a grant? I don't know. But what I do know was that it was a major case that we made when we submitted the federal funding for that transit system in Grand Rapids at that time. That experience obviously is different from Chicago because of size of cities. Minneapolis obviously will be different. I would just say that I don't expect that we're going to see a drastic change overnight because we rezoned areas to allow duplexes, triplexes. It's likely, highly likely going to be incremental. And incremental is good because then it doesn't overwhelm a community overnight as well. We're going to be working through this. And like I said, this is not, the fact that it's a 2040 plan does not mean it's set in stone. It's a living document. We have an opportunity to revisit this in 5 years' time. And we also I think this is a good experience for us in that we're laying the groundwork for what that update will look like. So by working with you in the development community and real estate community, working with our residents, working with elected and appointed officials, I think we're laying a very good groundwork right now for ourselves for what an update will look like in the future. And I think Charlotte, regardless of what's happened in other communities, we may be able to set some example here as to how you do this while at the same time mitigating displacement and at the same time making sure that you are listening to the community. I cannot guarantee that at the end of the day, the plans will meet everybody's expectations, but we want to have a plan that everybody can say they like something out of it that's really beneficial and positive. So we will continue to work with you and we'll continue to make sure that we get this second draft as responsive as we can, so that council will be able to make a decision at the end of the day. But it's not the end of the story. Even after adoption, there is still community engagement that will go on through the place types mapping, through the Unified Development Ordinance process. So it's not the end of engagement, and we'll continue to make sure that we stay in touch with you. So I really appreciate you jumping in tonight with your comments.
Thank you, Ty. As we conclude for tonight, I really want to close on these comments. One, I really want to thank Ty and the planning staff, Allison and others, for the work that they've put into the plan thus far and the overtime they're putting in for sure today and throughout the next several weeks. Want to thank the community for coming out tonight as well and participating. You are being heard. We are listening and will be responding in the most appropriate way where we can. The next opportunity to engage the council will be Thursday, April 15th at 5:30 p.m. The topics will include single-family zoning, applying the 10-minute goal, and the process to resolve conflicting policies. It will be hosted by the Mayor Pro Tem, Julie Eisel. Again, the next opportunity to engage will be next Thursday, April 15th at 5:30 p.m. There will also be a third 2040 plan town hall led by Councilmember Tarek Bakari on Thursday, April 22nd at 5:30 p.m. The topic will focus on fiscal impacts of the 2040 comp plan, single-family zoning, and community benefit agreements relating to economic development. Be sure to register for the best interactive experience by visiting cltgov.me/2040 town halls. Thank you to everyone who took the time to join us this evening. Have a great night. And again, thank you very much, Ty, for your participation and cooperation. Good night.
Sure.